The dimensional entities writhed in space as uncertainty ate away at their perfect order like acid. Their mathematical forms flickered between dimensions, losing coherence as doubt spread through their collective consciousness. Captain, Chen watched from the bridge of the defiant hope as the impossible being struggled with the concept that imperfection might not be a disease to be cured. For eons, they had believed that chaos was the enemy of existence. Now faced with humans who thrived on randomness, their fundamental beliefs were crumbling. Captain, Commander Brooks reported, the entities are destabilizing, but they're not being destroyed. They're changing. Changing how? Chen asked. Dr. Harrison studied the readings on his scanner. They're becoming less rigid, less mathematically perfect. The uncertainty we introduced is teaching them flexibility. One of the entities drifted closer to the human ship, its form still flickering but somehow more stable than before. When it spoke, its voice was different, less like cold equations and more like music. We have made an error, it said, and the admission seemed to cause it physical pain. We believed perfection was the only way to exist. But you show us that imperfection can also sustain life. It does more than sustain life, Martinez called out from the helm. It makes life worth living. We do not understand this concept, the entity replied. Worth living? What value does existence have beyond mathematical perfection? Chen thought about how to explain something so fundamentally human to a being that had never experienced joy, surprise, or wonder. Tell me, she said, in your perfect universe, did anything ever make you laugh? Laugh? This word is unknown to us. It's what we do when something unexpected brings us happiness. When chaos creates something beautiful instead of something terrible. Martinez suddenly spun the ship in a graceful spiral, not for any tactical reason, but simply because it felt right. The movement was pointless from a strategic standpoint, but it was elegant and joyful. The entity observed this action with growing confusion. Your pilot performs maneuvers that serve no logical purpose. This is inefficient, but it's fun, Martinez replied. Sometimes we do things just because they make us happy. Happy, the entity repeated slowly as if tasting the word. Another unknown concept. Chen realized that these beings had eliminated more than just chaos from their existence. They had eliminated everything that made existence meaningful. Joy, surprise, growth, discovery. In their quest for perfection, they had created a universe of living death. Would you like to learn? She asked gently. The entity was quiet for a long moment. Around it, the other entities had stopped trying to impose order on the chaotic space around the research station. Instead, they watched and listened, experiencing something they had never known before. Curiosity. Learning implies change, the entity said finally. Change implies imperfection. We were taught that imperfection leads to collapse. Your universe collapsed because it was too perfect, Dr. Harrison pointed out. It became so rigid that it couldn't adapt to any stress. Our universe survives because it's flexible. Chaos gives us room to grow and change. The entity's form shimmered as it processed this information. You suggest that our perfection was wrong? Not wrong, Chen said carefully. Incomplete. You achieved perfect order, but you forgot that life needs both order and chaos. Like a song needs both rhythm and melody. To demonstrate, Walsh began humming an old Earth tune over the comm channel. The melody was simple but beautiful, following patterns that were structured enough to be musical but unpredictable enough to be interesting. The entities listened in fascination. They had never encountered anything like music before, organized chaos that created beauty instead of destruction. This is pleasant, one of them said, wonder creeping into its mathematical voice. How is this possible? Because it's not perfect, Chen explained. If the song followed perfect mathematical rules, it would be boring. The small imperfections, the slight variations, the unexpected notes, those are what make it beautiful. Commander Zethkar, watching from the infinite wisdom, felt his understanding of the universe shift. He had always believed that superior technology and perfect order were the keys to galactic civilization. But the humans were showing him something different. That strength could come from adaptability. That beauty could emerge from chaos. Sir, his science officer whispered, the dimensional distortions are stabilizing. The entities are learning to coexist with chaos rather than eliminate it. The research station New Horizon, which had been flickering between dimensions, began to solidify as the entities stopped trying to impose their perfect order on the local spacetime. The twisted reality around the station slowly unfolded back into normal space. "Dr. Harrison," Chen said, "can your people get the station operational again?" "I think so, Captain. The dimensional breach is closing itself as the entities learn to exist within normal physics rather than fighting against it." One by one, the entities began to change. Their perfect geometric forms became more fluid, more organic. They were still beings of immense power and intelligence, but they were no longer trapped by their own perfection. "We owe you a debt," the first entity said to Captain Chen. "You have shown us that existence can be more than mathematical certainty. You have taught us to." "What is the word?" "Dream. Dreams are chaos with purpose," Chen replied with a smile. "They're possibilities that don't exist yet but might someday." The entity that had been learning to laugh suddenly made a sound that might have been their species' first attempt at laughter. It was awkward and uncertain, but it was beautiful in its imperfection. "We will return to our collapsed universe," the entity announced, "but we will not try to restore perfect order. Instead, we will introduce the chaos we have learned from you. Perhaps our reality can live again." "Good luck," Chen said sincerely. "And remember, perfection is overrated." As the entities began to phase back to their own dimension, the last one paused. "What shall we call this gift you have given us?" it asked. Chen thought for a moment. "Hope," she said. "The possibility that tomorrow can be better than today, even if you don't know how." The entities disappeared, taking their newfound appreciation for chaos back to their dead universe. The dimensional distortions around the research station continued to fade, leaving normal space-time in their wake. Commander Zethkar activated his comm system and called Captain Chen. When her face appeared on his screen, he could see something in her expression that he had never noticed before in any human. Quiet confidence born from accepting that life was imperfect and being okay with that. "Captain Chen," he said formally, "I must report this incident to the Galactic Council. What you accomplished here today, it changes everything." "How so, Commander?" "For thousands of years, the Council has valued species based on their technological advancement and social order. But you've shown us that there's another kind of strength, the ability to thrive in chaos, to find solutions where perfect logic fails." Chen nodded. "Humans aren't the strongest or the smartest species in the galaxy, Commander. But we might be the most stubborn. When everyone else says something is impossible, we tend to try it anyway. And sometimes," Zethkar said with what might have been the beginning of a smile, "impossible turns out to be possible after all." 3 months later, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council, surrounded by representatives of hundreds of species. The formal ceremonies were over, the speeches had been made, and humanity had been offered a new role in galactic civilization. They would no longer be the junior species, barely tolerated and largely ignored. Instead, they would be the specialists called upon when normal solutions failed. When the universe presented problems that perfect logic couldn't solve, they would call the humans, the species that had learned to turn chaos into hope. High Counselor Mordeth approached Chen after the ceremony, his ancient face showing something that might have been respect. "Captain," he said, "the Council has a question for your species. We have encountered many impossible situations over the millennia, situations where our best minds and greatest technologies have failed. Would humanity be willing to take on such challenges?" Chen thought about her crew aboard the Defiant Hope, about the 831 people they had saved from a research station that everyone said was doomed. She thought about the entities they had befriended instead of destroyed, about the impossible becoming possible through sheer human stubbornness. "Counselor," she said with a grin, "bring us your impossible problems. We humans love to prove that impossible is just another word for challenging." And in that moment, the galaxy gained something it had never had before, a species that specialized in making the impossible possible, one chaotic solution at a time. The universe, it turned out, was much more interesting with a little human chaos in it. Admiral Sarah Chen was drinking coffee and reviewing supply reports when the universe changed. The alarm started as a low beep, then grew louder as more systems detected the impossible signal. Chen set down her mug and watched her communications officer's face go pale. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission on the old emergency channels." "Which emergency channels?" Chen asked, already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. The ancient ones, ma'am. The protocols from the first galactic treaties. The ones that haven't been used in over 300 years. Chen stood up slowly. Those channels had been created during humanity's first contact with alien civilizations, back when the galaxy was a more dangerous place. The signals required quantum encryption that only a few species knew how to generate. As far as she knew, all those species were extinct or had forgotten the old ways. Put it through. The bridge speakers filled with sound unlike anything Chen had ever heard. It wasn't quite music and wasn't quite speech. It was crystalline, harmonic, beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. But underneath the alien beauty was something universally understood: pain. The translation computers struggled with the signal for several minutes before producing text on the main screen. The words appeared slowly, as if the machine was having trouble understanding concepts that didn't exist in human language. Peaceful singers, crystal gardens burning, children crying in harmonics of fear. Help us, warriors of the death world. Help us, please. The message continued for 20 minutes. It told of a species that had never known war, now facing extinction. It spoke of art being destroyed not for resources or territory, but simply because it was beautiful. It described an enemy that killed for the joy of killing. When the transmission ended, the bridge was silent. Source? Chen asked quietly. Unknown, Admiral. The signal came from deep space, approximately 400 light-years beyond our furthest colonies. The transmission route suggested originated from a region we haven't explored since the early expansion years. Chen called up star charts on the main screen. The coordinates pointed to a section of space that human ships had visited once, centuries ago, during the Great Exploration period. The record showed first contact with several peaceful species, including something called the Calorian Collective. Then nothing. Humanity had focused on other directions, other opportunities. Ma'am, her intelligence officer said, I'm showing massive energy signatures in that region. Ship movements on a scale we've never recorded before. Whatever's happening out there, it's big. Chen studied the data. Thousands of ships, weapons firing continuously. Entire solar systems going dark. It looked like a war of extermination. Get me the Colonial Council, she ordered. The call took 15 minutes to connect. When President Martinez appeared on screen, he looked tired. The colonies had been dealing with their own problems recently. Pirates, trade disputes, the usual challenges of maintaining civilization across hundreds of light years. Admiral Chen, this better be important. Mr. President, we've received a distress call. An unknown species is requesting aid under the old Galactic Accords. The old Accords? Martinez frowned. Sarah, those treaties are ancient history. We have no legal obligation to respond to signals from outside our territory. Sir, with respect, we have a moral obligation. Chen uploaded the translated message and sensor data. She watched Martinez's expression change as he read the Calorian plea for help. This is a request for military intervention in a conflict we know nothing about. In a region of space we haven't visited in generations. Admiral, we can't send our fleet on a rescue mission based on one transmission. Mr. President, our ancestors wrote those emergency protocols for a reason. When the galaxy was young and dangerous, we promised to answer calls for help from peaceful species. That promise didn't come with distance limits or expiration dates. Times change, Admiral. We have our own people to protect. Chen felt anger rising in her chest but kept her voice level. Sir, if we ignore this, we're not just abandoning the Calorians. We're abandoning everything we claim to believe in. We tell ourselves that humanity is different, that we're the good guys. But what does that mean if we only help when it's convenient? The screen was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Martinez sighed. What would you need? Full fleet authorization. Battle Group Alpha, including carriers and support vessels. Approximately 50 ships, 15,000 personnel. Sarah, that's our entire rapid response force. Yes, sir. From what we're seeing, anything less would be suicide. Martinez looked at the data again, studying the reports of burning worlds and desperate refugees. The Council will want a vote. Mr. President, by the time the Council votes, there may be no one left to save. Another long pause. Chen could see Martinez weighing political considerations against human lives he'd never met, might never meet. She understood his position, but she also understood what the sensor data meant. Somewhere out there, peaceful people were dying because they had no way to defend themselves. You have 6 hours to prepare, Martinez finally said. I'll present this to the Council as an emergency session. But Sarah, if this goes wrong, If we lose ships and people for aliens who might not even be worth saving, they're worth saving, sir. Trust me. The connection ended. Chen immediately activated fleet-wide communications. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Prepare for immediate deployment. Combat status, full supplies, maximum crew. This is not a drill. The next 6 hours were controlled chaos. The Terra Defense Fleet had been created after humanity's expansion into hostile space. These weren't exploration vessels or cargo haulers. These were warships designed by a species that had learned to fight for survival on a planet that tried to kill them every day. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded the assault carrier Indomitable. Her ship carried 200 fighters and 3,000 Marines, all volunteers from Earth's military academies. She found Chen in the fleet briefing room, studying tactical displays. "Admiral, my pilots are asking questions I can't answer," Vasquez said. "We're going to fight for aliens we've never met, in a war we don't understand against an enemy we know nothing about." "How do I explain that?" Chen looked up from the displays. "Elena, what did you swear when you took command?" "To protect the innocent and preserve peace." "Did that oath have a species requirement?" Vasquez smiled grimly. "No, ma'am, it didn't." "Then you explain it the same way I explained it to myself. Someone called for help. We answer." The fleet assembled in space above Earth. 50 ships, their hulls gleaming with adaptive armor and weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Each vessel carried the best technology humanity could build, and crews trained in tactics developed through centuries of conflict. Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, Humanity's Resolve, and looked out at the fleet. These ships represented the largest military force humanity had ever sent beyond its own territory. They were about to jump into unknown space, to fight an unknown enemy, for people they had never seen. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her communications officer announced. Chen activated the fleet channel. "This is Admiral Chen. In a few minutes we're going to jump to coordinates that most of us have never seen. We're answering a call for help from a species that asked for nothing more than the right to exist in peace. Some of you are wondering if this is worth the risk. Let me be clear. If we ignore cries for help because they come from strangers, if we let peaceful people die because it's not our problem, then we're not the people we claim to be. We're not the species that earned the respect of the galaxy. Today we remind everyone what it means to be human." She paused, looking out at the fleet one more time. "Jump coordinates uploaded. All ships prepare for hyperspace. Let's go answer that call." The space around Earth lit up with the blue glow of hyperspace generators. One by one, the ships of the Terra Defense Fleet disappeared into faster-than-light travel, racing toward a distant cry for help. Behind them, Earth spun quietly in its orbit, unaware that its children were about to fight the largest battle in human history. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Calorian territory, and what they found made even veteran soldiers question their sanity. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's Resolve, staring at sensor readings that defied belief. Thousands of enemy ships moved through the system in perfect formation, their weapons systematically destroying everything in their path. But they weren't just conquering, they were erasing. "Admiral," her sensor officer called out, voice tight with shock. "I'm reading debris fields where the star charts show inhabited planets. They're not just attacking military targets, they're destroying everything." Through the main viewport, Chen could see the remnants of what had once been a crystal city floating in space. The structures were beautiful even in death, their faceted surfaces catching starlight like frozen tears. But mixed with the crystalline debris were bodies, thousands of them. "Captain Vasquez, launch reconnaissance fighters. I want to know what we're dealing with." The assault carrier Indomitable released a squadron of stealth fighters that shot into the system like deadly arrows. Within minutes, they were transmitting back information that made Chen's blood run cold. "Admiral, the enemy fleet is massive. We're counting over 8,000 ships, with more arriving every hour. They're using planetary bombardment weapons on civilian targets. The pilots are reporting. They're reporting systematic destruction of what appear to be art installations and cultural sites." Chen activated the fleet channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. What we're seeing here is not warfare. It's genocide. These Vorthak aren't just conquering the Calorians. They're trying to erase them from existence." On her tactical display, she watched Vorthak ships surround a crystal forest that was still singing. The harmonics were faint but detectable, a desperate song of beauty trying to survive in a universe gone mad. The Vorthak ships fired in unison and the music died. "Ma'am," her communications officer said quietly, We're receiving transmissions from Calorian refugee ships. They're asking if we're the Deathworlders. Chen closed her eyes for a moment. Deathworlders. She had heard the term in historical documents, usually whispered by alien diplomats who didn't think humans were listening. It referred to species that evolved on worlds so dangerous that survival required a combination of intelligence, aggression, and complete refusal to give up. Earth qualified, but humans had never liked the term. Today, she would embrace it. Tell them yes. Tell them the Deathworlders heard their call. Captain Elena Vasquez watched the tactical display from Indomitable's bridge and felt her hands shake with rage. She had served in 3 colonial wars, had seen pirates murder civilians for sport, had fought in battles that left entire systems scarred. But this was different. This was evil in its purest form. Captain, her flight leader called over the comm. We've got visual on Caloran Prime. The Vorthak they're melting the crystal forests with plasma torches. They're not even harvesting them for resources. They're destroying them for fun. Vasquez looked at her crew, Marines, pilots, engineers, all of them staring at the screens with the same expression she felt on her own face. These weren't soldiers preparing for battle. These were humans who had just seen something that offended them to their core. All right, people, she said over the ship's intercom. I know what you're thinking because I'm thinking it too. This isn't about territory or resources or politics. This is about stopping something that should not exist in a civilized galaxy. Today we remind the universe why peaceful species sleep safely at night. Because somewhere out there, on worlds that forge killers from birth, people like us are willing to die to protect beauty and innocence. She activated her command channel. Admiral Indomitable requests permission to engage. Chen's voice came back immediately. Granted. All ships weapons free. Target the closest Vorthak formations. Show them what happens when you threaten the innocent. The human fleet spread out in attack formation. They had studied the tactical data during the hyperspace jump, analyzed Vorthak ship designs and weapon signatures. The enemy had superior numbers and heavier ships, but they also had something humans had learned to exploit centuries ago: predictability. The Vorthak fought like a machine. Every ship in its proper place, every maneuver by the book. Every formation designed for maximum efficiency. They had conquered dozens of species with these tactics, overwhelming their enemies through sheer mathematical superiority. They had never fought humans. Commander Marcus Rodriguez guided his heavy cruiser, defiant through a gap in the Vorthak formation that shouldn't have existed. His ship was outgunned and outnumbered, but Rodriguez had grown up on Luna Colony where a single mistake meant death in vacuum. He had learned to find opportunities where others saw only danger. Target the command ship's engine section, he ordered. Full spread plasma torpedoes, sir. That'll put us in range of their entire battle group. Good. Maybe they'll be too busy shooting at us to notice the rest of our fleet. The Defiant opened fire at point-blank range. Its weapons tearing through Vorthak armor like paper. The enemy command ship shuddered under the impact. Its formation dissolving into chaos as subordinate ships tried to respond to threats from multiple directions. Rodriguez smiled grimly as Vorthak ships surrounded his vessel. They were trying to overwhelm him with superior firepower, just like they had with the Calorians. But the Calorians were peaceful artists. Rodriguez was a human, and humans had learned long ago that sometimes the best defense was to hurt your enemy so badly that they stopped wanting to fight. All weapons, continuous fire. Engineering, give me everything the reactors have. We're going to make them remember this. Across the battle zone, similar scenes played out as human ships engaged Vorthak forces with tactics that bordered on insane. Captain Lisa Park rammed her destroyer through a Vorthak cruiser, her crew cheering as both ships exploded. Lieutenant Commander James Wright led his fighter squadron in a head-on attack against a Vorthak dreadnought, trading his entire wing for the enemy ship's main guns. The Vorthak had expected easy victory. They found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to welcome death if it meant protecting others. Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold and felt pride mix with grief. Her people were dying, but they were dying for something that mattered. Every human ship that fell took multiple Vorthak vessels with it. Every sacrifice bought time for Calorian civilians to escape. Admiral, her tactical officer called out. The Vorthak are regrouping. They're pulling back from the outer systems. They're learning, Chen replied. They've never faced an enemy willing to trade ships one for one. It's making them cautious. Through the chaos of battle, a new signal appeared on the communications board. It was Calorian, but different from the earlier transmissions. Stronger, more hopeful. Admiral, we're receiving a message from Captain Zelith of the Calorian refugee fleet. He says they want to help. Chen frowned. They're not equipped for this kind of fight. He knows, ma'am, but he's asking if his ships can assist with evacuation and medical support. He says the Calorians have knowledge of crystal technology that might be useful for emergency repairs. Chen made a decision that would change both species forever. Tell him yes. Welcome to the war, Captain Zelith. On the distant refugee ship, Zelith received the message and felt something his people had never experienced before. The fierce joy of fighting back against evil. The Calorians couldn't match human weapons or tactics, but they could sing, and their songs could heal. Within hours, Calorian ships were moving through the battle zone, their crystal hulls resonating with harmonics that helped repair human vessels. Their medical knowledge, learned through centuries of peaceful study, saved hundreds of human lives. Most importantly, their presence reminded everyone why the battle was being fought. The war for Calorian space had begun, and for the first time since the Vorthak horde had started its expansion, they were learning what it meant to fight an enemy that refused to be conquered. The battle for Calorian space had been raging for 6 days when everything changed. Commander Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching his damage control teams work miracles with crystal technology. The Calorians had taught his engineers how to use harmonic frequencies to repair hull breaches, creating temporary patches that were stronger than the original metal. It was impossible science that worked anyway, because sometimes impossible was exactly what you needed. Commander, his tactical officer called out, we're getting priority signals from Fleet Command. The Vorthak are moving something big toward Kelleran Prime. Rodriguez pulled up the sensor data and felt his stomach drop. The Vorthak planet killer was a ship the size of a small moon, covered in weapons designed to crack worlds open from orbit. Intelligence reports said it could turn an entire planet into molten slag in a matter of hours. Time to intercept? If it maintains current speed, it'll reach Kelleran Prime in 18 hours. Rodriguez looked at his crew. The Defiant had been in continuous combat for nearly a week. His ship was held together by human engineering and Calorian crystal songs. His crew was exhausted, running on coffee and determination. But on Kelleran Prime, billions of Calorians were still alive, still singing their beautiful music in crystal cities that had stood for thousands of years. Signal Admiral Chen. Tell her we volunteer for intercept duty. On humanity's resolve. Admiral Chen stared at the tactical display and tried to find a solution that didn't involve sending good people to die. The planet killer was escorted by over 200 Vorthak ships. Even if she sent her entire fleet, the chances of stopping it were minimal. Admiral, Captain Vasquez's voice came over the comm from Indomitable. My pilots have been studying the planet killer's design. There might be a way. Chen activated the secure channel. Go ahead, Elena. The ship is massive, but that's also its weakness. It needs enormous power reactors to move something that size. If we could get inside cause a cascade failure in the reactor core, that would be a suicide mission. Yes, ma'am, it would. Chen closed her eyes. In 6 days of fighting, she had watched hundreds of good people die to protect aliens they had never met. Each death hurt, but each death also proved something important about humanity. They were willing to pay any price to protect the innocent. Elena, you're not going alone. Marcus has already volunteered the Defiant for intercept duty. I'm assigning a full strike force. Admiral, with respect, this needs to be fast and precise. Too many ships will just get in each other's way. Chen knew Vasquez was right, but she also knew what she was really asking. Elena, if you do this, if you take Indomitable into that thing, you're not coming back. I know. But Admiral, if we don't do this, the Calorians don't have a chance. And if we let the Calorians die when we could have saved them, what does that make us? While the human commanders planned their desperate mission, Dr. Amy Walsh was on Calorian Prime, trying to save what could be saved. She was a xenobiologist, trained to study alien life forms. But for the past week, she had been learning to sing. The crystal forests of Calorian Prime were living entities, grown and tended by Calorian artists over thousands of years. Each tree was unique, its crystalline structure creating specific harmonic frequencies when the wind passed through its branches. Together they formed symphonies that could last for days, music so beautiful it made humans weep just to hear it. Dr. Walsh, her assistant, called over the comm. We need to evacuate. The Vorthak ground forces are only 20 kilometers away. Walsh looked up from the crystal sapling she was carefully transplanting into a portable growing chamber. Around her, the greatest art gallery in the galaxy stood in danger of being destroyed by creatures who saw beauty as weakness. 5 more minutes, she said. I think I can save this entire grove. The technique was delicate. Each crystal tree was connected to others through underground root networks that carried harmonic vibrations. If she could preserve the root structure while transplanting key specimens, she might be able to recreate the grove's unique song on another world. Doctor, we don't have 5 minutes. The Vorthak are using orbital bombardment. They're targeting the crystal forests specifically. Walsh carefully sealed the growing chamber and picked up her equipment. She had managed to save samples from 12 different groves, each representing centuries of Calorian artistic development. If humanity survived this war, if the Calorians found new homes among the stars, these samples would help them rebuild their culture. All right, she said, running toward the evacuation shuttle. But we're coming back. After we win this war, we're coming back to replant everything. In space above Caloran Prime, the human fleet prepared for its most desperate gamble. The Defiant and Indomitable moved into attack formation, supported by 6 smaller ships that would try to clear a path to the planet killer. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, came the voice over the comm. What you're about to attempt has never been tried before. You're going to fly into the most heavily defended target in Vorthak space and somehow destroy something that's designed to be indestructible. The odds are against you. The enemy outnumbers you 50-1. You probably won't survive. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. But if anyone can do this, it's you. You're humans. You're from a world that tried to kill you every day until you got strong enough to kill it back. You've spent your entire lives doing impossible things because someone told you they needed to be done. Today is no different. Go show the galaxy what humans do when innocent people are threatened. Commander Rodriguez felt his crew tense around him as the Defiant accelerated toward the planet killer. The massive ship grew larger on the view screen until it filled their entire field of vision. Its surface was covered with weapon turrets, each one capable of destroying a cruiser with a single shot. Sir, his weapons officer said, I'm reading massive energy buildup. They're preparing to fire on Caloran Prime. Time to target. 6 minutes until we reach their outer defense perimeter. But sir, their escorts are moving to intercept. Rodriguez watched 200 Vorthak ships converge on his tiny strike force. The math was simple. The humans would be overwhelmed and destroyed long before they reached their target. Unless... Elena, he called over the comm to Indomitable. I'm going to clear you a path. When you see the opening, take it and don't look back. Marcus, what are you planning? Something stupid, Rodriguez replied, then switched to ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the commander. We came here to stop that planet killer from destroying Caloran Prime. We're going to do that, but it's going to cost us everything. I want you to know that serving with you has been the honor of my life. Today we proved that some things are worth dying for. He turned to his helmsman. Full power to engines. Set ramming course for the planet killer's main reactor. The Defiant shot forward like a missile, its engines burning at maximum power. Vorthak ships swarmed around it, their weapons lighting up space with deadly fire. Rodriguez's ship took hit after hit, its armor vaporizing under the assault, but it kept flying. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7, damage control reported. Life support failing in sections 2 and 8. Sir, we're not going to make it. Yes, we are, Rodriguez said firmly. Even if we have to crawl there on our hands and knees, we're going to make it. Behind them, Captain Vasquez watched the Defiant's heroic charge and knew her moment had come. The enemy escorts were converging on Rodriguez's ship, leaving a brief gap in their defensive formation. All fighters, launch. All Marines, prepare for boarding action. We're going inside that thing and we're going to tear it apart from within. The Indomitable dove toward the planet killer's docking bays, its fighters clearing the way with weapons fire that lit up the darkness. Vasquez felt her ship shudder as enemy fire found its mark. But she kept flying straight toward the massive ship's hull. 30 seconds to impact. Her helmsman reported. All hands, brace for collision. The Indomitable smashed through the planet killer's outer hull like a bullet through paper, its reinforced prow, carrying it deep into the enemy ship's interior. Alarm screamed as atmosphere vented into space, but Vasquez's Marines were already moving, their power armor protecting them from the chaos. Move, 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 Sergeant Kane shouted as his team fought their way toward the reactor core. We've got maybe 10 minutes before this whole ship blows up. Behind them, the Defiant completed its final mission. Rodriguez's ship, crippled and burning, crashed into the planet killer's main reactor with enough force to crack the containment fields. Energy cascaded through the massive ship's systems, and for a moment, the planet killer's weapons fell silent. In that moment of silence, the crystal forests of Kelloran Prime continued their ancient songs, unaware of how close they had come to eternal silence. The explosion of the Vorthak planet killer lit up the Kelloran system like a new star. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of humanity's resolve as the massive ship tore itself apart, its reactor cascade spreading through decks the size of cities. The shockwave hit her fleet minutes later, a wall of energy that shook even the heavy cruisers. "Status report on Indomitable," she ordered. "No response, Admiral. We're showing massive debris fields where the planet killer used to be." Chen closed her eyes. Elena Vasquez had been her friend for 20 years, ever since they were junior officers serving on patrol ships at the edge of human space. Marcus Rodriguez had saved her life during the Centauri Rebellion. Now they were gone, along with thousands of other good people who had volunteered to die for strangers. "Admiral," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a signal from the Vorthak fleet commander." The main screen flickered, showing the insectoid face of a Vorthak general. Its mandibles clicked rapidly, which Chen had learned indicated extreme agitation. "Deathworlders," the Vorthak said in its buzzing voice. "You have destroyed our greatest weapon. You have cost us ships and warriors, but you cannot stop the Horde. We have 1,000 fleets, 1,000,000 ships. We will strip this galaxy bare, world by world, species by species." Chen stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice carried the cold fury of someone who had lost too many friends. "General, let me explain something about humans. We're from a world where everything tried to kill us. The weather, the animals, the diseases, even the plants. We survived by refusing to quit no matter how bad things got. You want to threaten us? You want to promise that you'll never stop coming? Good. We've been waiting for a real fight." She activated the fleet channel so every human ship could hear her next words. "This is Admiral Chen to all Vorthak forces. You came to this system to destroy a peaceful people. You murdered civilians, destroyed art, silenced songs that had been sung for thousands of years. You did this because you believed might makes right, because you thought peaceful species were weak and deserved to die. You were wrong." On screens throughout the human fleet, tired faces looked up from damage control stations and weapons consoles. These were people who had been fighting for a week, who had watched friends die, who had every reason to be exhausted and defeated. Instead, they looked angry. "You want to fight humanity," Chen continued. "You want to test yourselves against a species from a death world? Then come and try. But understand this. We don't fight for territory or resources or glory. We fight for the right of peaceful people to exist without fear, and we will never, ever stop." The Vorthak general's image flickered off the screen, but not before Chen saw something she had never seen in an enemy's eyes before. Doubt. On the surface of Kelloran Prime, Captain Zelith stood in the ruins of the greatest crystal city and listened to his people sing. They were singing songs of grief for the dead, but also songs of hope for the living. And woven through their harmonies was something new, songs of gratitude for the humans who had died to protect them. "Captain," one of his officers approached. "We're receiving word from the refugee fleets. The human admiral wants to speak with you." Zelith activated his communicator and heard Admiral Chen's voice, tired but determined. "Captain, we've won this battle, but the war is far from over. The Vorthak will be back and they'll bring more ships next time. Your people need to evacuate to safer space." "Admiral Chen," Zelith replied, "my people have discussed this. We will not run again. We will stand with you and fight. Captain, with all due respect, your people aren't warriors." "No," Zelith agreed. "We are not warriors, but we are no longer helpless. Your people have taught us something important. Sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to fight for it." Chen was quiet for a moment. "What are you proposing?" "An alliance. Human weapons and tactics, Kellorian technology and knowledge. Your people die too easily in space battles. Our crystal technology can strengthen your ships, heal your wounded. Our harmonic frequencies can disrupt Vorthak communications. Together we might actually win this war." 3 months later, Dr. Amy Walsh stood in the first human Kellorian joint research facility, watching something impossible happen. Her assistant, a young Kellorian named Lithis, was singing to a crystal matrix that was growing around the damaged hull of a human destroyer. The crystal was literally healing the ship, filling in gaps in the armor with structures stronger than anything human engineers had ever created. "Doctor," Lithy said, her harmonic voice carrying notes of curiosity, "why do your people risk so much for others? Even other humans ask this question." Walsh looked out the window at the shipyard where human and Calorian crews worked side by side. Human engineers were learning to sing crystal-growing songs, while Calorian artists were learning to design armor that could stop Vorthak plasma cannons. "I think," Walsh said slowly, "it's because we know what it's like to be afraid. Earth tried to kill us for millions of years. We know what it feels like to be small and weak and facing something that wants to destroy you. When we see others in that situation, we remember, and we refuse to let it happen again." In space above the shipyard, the combined human-Calorian fleet was preparing for its next mission. The Vorthak had attacked 3 more peaceful species in the past month, thinking that the loss of their planet killer was just a temporary setback. They were about to learn otherwise. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her new flagship, a vessel that combined human weapons with Calorian crystal technology. The ship was beautiful, its hull singing with harmonics that could heal damage in real time. But it was also deadly, armed with weapons that no enemy had ever faced. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving distress calls from the Althean system. The Vorthak are attacking the floating cities." Chen activated the fleet channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We have another call for help. Another peaceful species needs protection from the Vorthak horde. Questions?" Throughout the fleet, human and Calorian voices responded as one. "No questions, Admiral." "Then let's go remind the galaxy what happens when bullies pick on the innocent. Jump in 60 seconds. As the fleet prepared to enter hyperspace, Chen thought about the message that had started it all, a desperate song from strangers, broadcast into the dark in the hope that someone would care enough to help. That message had cost humanity thousands of lives and dozens of ships. It had brought them into a war that might last generations. It was the best decision they had ever made. The combined fleet vanished into hyperspace, carrying a simple message to every predator species in the galaxy. The age of easy conquest was over. Somewhere in the dark between stars, the Deathworlders were listening for cries for help, and they would always answer. On Caloran Prime, in a crystal garden that had been replanted with seeds saved by Dr. Walsh, new songs began to grow. They were different from the old songs, carrying harmonics that no Calorian had ever sung before. They were songs of friendship between species, of alliances forged in battle, of hope for a galaxy where peaceful beings could create beauty without fear. The trees sang of crystal cities and human courage, of desperate battles and impossible victories. But most of all, they sang of the day when strangers became friends, when a call for help was answered across the void, and when 2 very different species learned that some things were worth fighting for. The songs would continue for thousands of years, passed down through generations of both humans and Calorians. And whenever young beings of either species asked why the alliance existed, why humans and Calorians stood together against the darkness, the crystal trees would sing the answer, because when someone calls for help, you answer. That's what makes you worth saving.